Chapter 1. Prelude to Conflict. In the 1930s, global tensions were on the rise, with the world witnessing the rapid expansion of militaristic and imperialistic regimes. Japan was no exception, as it sought to expand its empire throughout Asia. Japan's aggression in China, beginning in 1937 with the invasion of Manchuria, drew international condemnation. The United States, deeply concerned about Japan's actions and their implications for regional stability, responded with economic sanctions and an embargo on key resources, including oil and steel. These measures strained relations between the two nations and created an atmosphere of increasing hostility. Chapter 2. The Road to War. The deteriorating relations between the United States and Japan were clear signs of an impending conflict. Diplomatic efforts were made to ease the situation, but they failed to produce a peaceful resolution. Meanwhile, in Washington, the American government grew increasingly worried about Japan's aggressive moves in the Pacific. The United States started to bolster its military presence in the Pacific, anticipating the possibility of war. Tensions continued to escalate as both nations prepared for an inevitable clash. Chapter 3. The Japanese Plan. The attack on Pearl Harbor was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was part of a meticulously crafted Japanese strategy to disable the U.S. Pacific Fleet and expand their territorial gains in the Pacific without immediate American intervention. The Japanese Imperial Navy planned and coordinated the attack with precision, keeping their intentions well hidden. They assembled a formidable naval task force, including 6 aircraft carriers, to carry out the surprise assault. Chapter 4. A date which will live in infamy. At precisely 7:55 a.m. local time on December 7, 1941, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor began. The morning was calm and clear as Japanese aircraft launched a surprise raid on the U.S. naval base. In quick succession, they struck military installations, airfields, and the American ships moored in the harbor. The attack was devastating. Multiple waves of Japanese planes, including bombers and torpedo planes, hammered their targets. The element of surprise allowed the Japanese to inflict significant damage, taking the American forces stationed at Pearl Harbor by surprise. Chapter 5. Chaos and Devastation. The consequences of the attack on Pearl Harbor were dire. Battleships like the USS Arizona and USS Oklahoma were sunk, their crews entombed within. Others, such as the USS West Virginia and USS California, were heavily damaged. Aircraft parked on the ground were destroyed in the initial wave of bombings, crippling the U.S. Pacific Fleet's air capabilities. The attack claimed the lives of over 2,400 Americans and left more than 1,000 injured. The harbor was littered with wreckage, oil fires, and chaos. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. In the wake of the attack, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress with his famous Day of Infamy speech, asking for a declaration of war against Japan. The United States officially entered World War II, with Roosevelt declaring December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The nation rallied behind the war effort, and the attack on Pearl Harbor became a defining moment in American history. Chapter 7. The Road to Victory. The attack on Pearl Harbor served as a turning point in World War II. The United States, now fully committed to the conflict, mobilized its vast resources and manpower to defeat the Axis powers. Over the next 4 years, the nation worked tirelessly on the home front and abroad, gradually turning the tide of the war in favor of the Allies. The eventual victory in 1945 marked the end of the most devastating conflict in history. Chapter 8. Remembering Pearl Harbor. Today, Pearl Harbor remains a solemn and historic site. The USS Arizona Memorial, which spans the sunken battleship, stands as a powerful reminder of the lives lost during the attack. The events of December 7, 1941, continue to influence the collective memory of the United States. Pearl Harbor, as both a site of tragedy and a symbol of resilience, serves as a lasting testament to the impact of that fateful day on the nation's history and identity.